Now, to discuss Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Adampur Air Force Station and its significance from a domestic as well as from a global point of view, we have with us Lieutenant General Rajiv Chopra, retired, and he's a defense expert. His location is New Delhi, and Sanjay Bhattacharya, former Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. Ambassador Bhattacharya is also joining us from New Delhi. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us. General Chopra, let me start with you. The Prime Minister's visit, he was photographed alongside that intact S-400, also MiG-29, directly disproving Pakistan's narrative. How does this, in fact, change the narrative now?
See, the Prime Minister's visit came after there is a cessation of little firing between the two nations. And, there was a false narrative or a propaganda warfare by Pakistan that it has destroyed or damaged the Air Force Station at Adampur, and also has brought considerable damage to our S-400 missile system, which is the most costly and important system and the world #1 system. And since it was a false narrative, the Prime Minister decided to go to this forward base, which is about 100 kilometers from the international borders, and has been used as a forward base for operations in 65, 71, and also in the Kargil operation. Okay. And see, if the airstrip was damaged, the Prime Minister aircraft couldn't have landed.
Right.
That
indeed
brings the another thing, that the Prime Minister himself was photographed along with the MiG-29 and also the S-400 system. It totally destroyed the false narrative of the Pak army.
Yes.
More than that, it was the boldest, loudest, clearest message by our Honorable Prime Minister to Pakistan. In the strategic parlance, it is known as strategic messaging, that we will not tolerate any nonsense.
Okay.
It was a big morale booster for the air warriors who were present there. Not only them, for the entire armed forces, as a leadership is in the forward area and not taking decisions from the officers in Delhi. That shows how protected he feels in the airbase. The operation Sindoor is still in progress, and the other side, if you see, the General Asim Munir is not being seen since the commencement of these operations. He's been, I believe, hiding in a bunker. He's left his accommodation because he's very, very scared, as very, very devastating, crippling effect was brought in the 11 air bases, especially the air base which is close to Rawalpindi and Islamabad. Yes. That's the Noor Khan Air Base, where the missile systems which were Chinese made have been destroyed, and is the most important air base that houses the air mobile command there. It also has strategic airlift, strategic logistic base, and more important than that, all the political leaders and the military leaders have a VIP flight squadron there. Therefore, he has realized that you can hit him so close to Rawalpindi headquarters, his life is also not safe. But as India did not want to do that, but I believe he's hiding in a bunker. He's not shown his face even in the Pakistan media.
Right, General Chopra. So we're talking about messaging here. So Ambassador Bhattacharya, do you see the Prime Minister's visit to Adampur Air Force Station as a direct counter to Pakistan's claims, or is there a larger message, some sort of new level of military diplomacy in a sense?
Right. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I think Prime Minister made a very forceful speech the other evening, and he followed it up with a visit to a military base today. And that shows how important the Prime Minister regards the role of the armed forces in this particular operation that we have waged against terror. The armed forces have been exemplary in their conduct and in the execution of the tasks assigned to them. So it is but natural for the Prime Minister to go and spend time with them. But it also has a wider message. And I think there are two that we have to bear in mind. The first is to counter the disinformation that has been making waves, particularly from the Pakistan side, about the kind of damage that they have supposedly inflicted on the Indian infrastructure. The second, which I think is more telling, is to actually reiterate that message that he had said the last evening, and to go further to say that if Pakistan were to do such a misadventure again,
Yes.
they would be met with very emphatically and with renewed force. Recall that when the first strikes were launched on the 7th of May, it was partly in retaliation to the heinous terror attack in Pahalgam, but also it was a preemption because we had evidence, information that there were more strikes that were being planned. And preemption is probably going to be what is going to take the upper hand as we go forward.
Okay.
And given that the army, the armed forces have been given a go-ahead to deal with this particular menace coming from the Pakistan side, preemption, which is a very necessary part of modern warfare, as it has been throughout history, will probably play a bigger role and will probably act as a greater deterrent force for the Pakistani armed forces who aid and abet terrorists and consort with Islamists.
General Chopra, what does Prime Minister's engagement with the Air Force personnel reveal about India's military preparedness?
See, firstly, the body language of the Prime Minister was really majestic. It shows almost that it was a victory cry. The morale of the air warriors was too high. What he conveyed to them, that he conveyed his gratitude to the armed forces and the air warriors who were there for the kind of job they have done. They have brought a crippling effect on the Pakistan armed forces. What he said, two things. This is a new normal and this is a new age warfare. I'd like to dwell on these 2 points. Firstly, new normal. He says terrorists and talk cannot go together. Blood and water cannot flow together. He made three very pertinent points, that is, terrorists and their sponsors, whether be in the government or in the army, will be treated with same remorse and the same manner, which you are well aware how the 9 terrorist camps were destroyed. We will not accept any nuclear blackmail by the Pakistan, as everybody is aware that India is the 4th country in the world which has a nuclear triad. Nuclear triad means we can fire the nuclear arsenal
weapon, yes,
in the air, in the sea and on land. The third important point which he told, that we will decide the method and the way we are going to punish the terrorists. And he also brought out yesterday that goli ka jawab gole se denge. That is the kind of punishment we will inflict on them. I want to also bring out certain things. He also said that it's a modern age warfare where niche weapons and precise ammunition were displayed. You are well aware, everybody, what devastating effect the 9 terrorist camps were destroyed and 11 air bases were destroyed, and it was not done. It was done from the own side of the line of control or the international border. You are well aware how robust was our air defense system and how weak was his air defense system, which was Chinese made. It was penetrated on the first day. I believe his aircraft were also taken off from there towards Afghanistan. To have a very fake narrative, you are well aware, we had closed our forward airports, but he was flying his aircraft from Lahore to Karachi. That was, in case we shoot out, it will be taken by the world in a very negative manner. But India restrained itself and did not fire. This is what few things I want to bring out. Another 2 points want to add, that what he has brought out, that anything between India and Pakistan is a bilateral issue.
Yes.
Secondly, there will be talk only on terror and also on the illegal occupation of Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir.
Yes.
These are few important takeaways for the Indian Army, that we have a very robust leadership, both in terms of political as well as military leadership, and our troops are very battle-hardened and they'll deliver a decisive blow as they've been
Yes.
asked.
Let me bring in Ambassador Bhattacharya once again. So, obviously, the visit has boosted the morale of the armed forces, but Ambassador Bhattacharya, does it also reinforce national unity around India's counter-terror efforts?
Yes, certainly it does. And I think this is again like a continuation of what happened yesterday when Prime Minister spoke to the nation and gave his message, drew the red lines, the new red lines, so to say, against Pakistani terror attacks on India, and in which he lauded the role of the armed forces. Let us not forget that the armed forces have always been a huge unifying factor for the nation. They have fought the wars very valiantly and have delivered every time. And it's not just in wars, because, I think our Indian armed forces have shown their credit even in peacetime, when there are humanitarian disasters, when there are natural disasters, and they have come to the assistance of the people. So the kind of sentiment that the people of India have for the armed forces is always one that we hold them in the highest esteem, and we see them as the saviors of the motherland. So when Prime Minister goes there, he reinforces that belief that the Indians, that the people of India, the citizens of India have for their armed forces. The second thing, I think this is also a message to the rest of the world. And I think there is a message that has sometimes not been fully appreciated by other countries, by many countries. The fact that Pakistan is actually the epicenter of terror. It's not just a country from which terrorists come and wreak havoc in different parts of the world, particularly, of course, in India.
Right.
But that the Pakistan state, particularly its armed forces, have been at the base of actually supporting and abetting and training and giving shelter to these terrorists. And therefore, they need to be dealt with at a slightly different level. And therefore, there needs to be greater unity across the world in terms of the zero tolerance on terror. And this needs to go across, the message needs to go across to different capitals. And Prime Minister, I think, is also sending out this additional message to the global community who must be watching, to see that if you do not take action, you will also face the consequences. Yesterday, he'd referred to several instances where Pakistan-trained terrorists had wreaked havoc in different parts of the world, in the United States and the United Kingdom and other places. So this is a message also to the global community to
Absolutely.
fight terror.
General Chopra, so this is clearly, an evolving defense doctrine, something that's the new normal now. Can you stress a little bit on that, particularly regarding precision strikes and proactive military engagement?
Yeah, like I brought out, Pakistan on the 7th morning was totally taken by surprise. Though they were alert that something is going to happen, but we took 14 days for detailed planning, because we had to pick up the coordinates by the intelligence agencies and also from the satellites. We had the exact coordinate of 21 terror camps. Out of that, we targeted 9. And that was done again, I repeat, from the own side of the line of control and own side of the IB. There were 9 terror camps. 4 first time in Punjab, the heartland. We have never struck there. We always struck in the Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And these were Rafale aircraft, which are state-of-the-art aircraft with
Yes.
very niche weapons and the munitions, precision strike weapons. As you're aware, the missiles and the bombers which they used, they had a very crippling effect. In fact, they were devastating. The Pakistanis were shattered because as reports came, and the best thing what you are showing, that it was a real-time, images were sent, not only to see the population of India, Pakistan and also the world, the kind of before and after images which you are showing on the screen
Yes.
has shown what was it before and what it is after. So there is no question of anybody having a iota of doubt that the damage was not done.
Indeed.
The things didn't last there. After that, we went on the air and we said it was a non-escalatory precision strike, and
Yes.
hereafter, because it was on the terror camps, we will not escalate unless you escalate and hit a military installation or strategic or the civilian. But Pakistan, as it is, it did not budge. It struck us by 400 to 500 drones and also
Yes.
the missiles. And you have seen not even a single missile or the drone. Our air defense systems not only was able to hold like a wall, but at the same time, Indian Armed Forces crippled the air defense systems where the
Right.
aircrafts were taken towards Afghanistan. And again, the images were shown on these 11 aircraft air bases, what kind of damage has been brought out today, that more than 20% of the damage is being done.
Yes,
And these images we'll
sure.
keep picking up, and maybe the damage is more. Some aircrafts have been destroyed, some radar
Right.
system, the missile system has been destroyed.
Indeed, Ambassador Bhattacharya, now India has been transparent in debunking all the misinformation from Pakistan. How does, the evidence-based approach that India has taken contrast with Pakistan's disinformation tactics? And do you see this, impacting or strengthening India's global standing?
Right. Mark, if I may just make a point about the military strikes, although I'm not
Sure.
a military strategist, because I think there are three important points that emerge from Op Sindoor. The first is that if you compare it with the previous instances where we had a surgical strike, where we had Balakot, which was a single attack point, we see a big escalation in the nature of the strike. It's not
Yes.
that the strike is escalatory in nature, but there is a big step up in the kind of activities and the targets that we've hit. We've also hit, for instance, the headquarters of the GEM and the LET and the Hizbul Mujahideen, and many of their leaders, including proscribed terrorists, have been killed in the process. So this is, I think, an escalation that the Pakistan side and its sponsors must bear in mind. The second, as the general was also mentioning, is the very deliberate and the widespread use of technology, which actually reflects a new war doctrine that we have now been able to adopt. And the third, and I wish to mention this, is the debunking of the so-called nuclear blackmail that the Pakistanis would often talk about. It has been demonstrated that they cannot use this nuclear card against us because Pakistan does not have the capacity to actually deal with us in that particular manner unless it wants to imperil its entire population. So I think those three need to be kept in mind as we look at it from a political analyst's perspective as well. Now, regarding the point that you made, I think the information narrative is something that is always there in war scenarios, and there will be different narratives that come out. If you look at the narrative that came out from India or the one that came out from Pakistan, there is a sharp contrast. And if you look at it with the so-called media from the Western world or from other parts of the world, there again would be certain subtext or certain context to it, which may be slightly different. I think what our media information has sought to do was to provide as much of evidence possible. And a lot of this has happened because we've been able to use technology, live feeds that have actually been shared with our media and with the international media so that they get a more credible information. And why has this happened? And I think that question is also very important because India essentially is a democracy, and our greatest strength is our democratic beliefs and the power and the empowerment that we give to our people and the citizens so that they know and they feel empowered. And in that particular exercise, I think there is obviously a big gap between India and her neighbors, Pakistan in particular. And therefore, we cannot expect the same standards from many of our neighbors. But they must do what they have to do. But I think their credibility lies very low. And the world is not full of fools. They know what is actually happening. And therefore, when it comes from a democratic source with evidence, as you pointed out, evidence being shown, live feeds, that will carry the narrative much more strongly than any other forced narrative.
Indeed. So it's India's credibility through the strong democratic institutions that we possess. But, General Chopra, what message does the Prime Minister's visit then to Adampur send for India's future military engagements? And, also, does Operation Sindoor redefine India's stance on counterterrorism forever?
Yeah, you brought a very valid point. Firstly, we have very clearly said not only the terrorists, but the handlers, whether they be in the government or with the armed forces or the popularly known as the ISI, will be dealt in the same manner as the terrorists. That is the first new normal what we are talking about. Secondly, we'll decide the time, place, and the method, the way we are going to strike them, and we
Yes.
have shown our military powers how we are going to do it. And the third point, what he brought out, that we are not going to take a nuclear bluff. It is well established now that he always cries hoax. He's got two weapons, that is strategic weapons, that is one is the nuclear bomb and one is the terrorism. He's been playing hoax to them and he's always threatening the world. And we have, busted his nuclear bogey and also that we can strike his terror camps anytime. Now we have said the terror camps include their handlers also. This is the
Okay.
new normal, and we have also brought out the new normal is we will not allow any issue, especially the Kashmir issue, to be internationalized because it is a bilateral issue. And we
Indeed.
are not looking at the Kashmir issue. We only want to talk about terror and the illegal occupation of Pak occupied J&K. And
Right. Indeed. We're running short of time. A final word from you, Ambassador Bhattacharya. So, Prime Minister's visit also does have a strategic signal for India's broader defense posture to allies as well? I mean, apart from adversaries?
Well, yes, certainly. I think the other message that comes out is that India is, a great power in the making. And a lot of it has to do with the remarkable success that we've had on the economic front. And I think even during the war or the conflict that we've had with Pakistan recently, our economy has not been affected. In fact, if you look at the Sensex, that has been going up. So this renews confidence in the world around about investments in India, making India part of supply chains. And therefore, I think we'll get back to the main business of making India great again. And a lot of that will be the economic story. With economic growth, with the democracy that we have, with the very united, empowered population that we have, we will also be a huge defense power. So I think that's the path that Prime Minister had adopted many years ago, and I think that's the path he would re-embark on.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, former Secretary from the Ministry of External Affairs, and Lieutenant General Rajiv Chopra, retired defense expert. Thank you very much, both of you, for putting all this into context for us.